The U.S. military represents freedom and oppression. Chapter 1. The U.S. military is someone's hero and someone's zero. The psychology of the U.S. military. The U.S. military got embarrassed by the video where the American gunner in a helicopter shot several people because his commander told him a guy was carrying a gun when it was obviously a camera. They killed 2 Reuters journalists in the process. They call innocent deaths collateral damage. The U.S. military makes long-range plans, then creates propaganda and false flag events in order to justify doing them. The U.S. military says people hate America because they're jealous of its freedom and prosperity. Some people hate them because they're bullies raking violence and death. The United States military has a history of intervening in other countries' affairs. In 1898, it took the Philippines, Cuba, and Puerto Rico from Spain. You can see a list at academic.evergreen.edu/g/grossmaz/interventions.html. American bombers firebombed German and Japanese cities such as Dresden and Tokyo to kill innocent civilians and destroy many homes, thinking it would weaken the spiritual resolve of the enemy. They were breaking the rules of war by going after innocent people. The propaganda says that the Americans had to drop the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima in order to avoid future American deaths that an invasion would bring, but the truth is the war was already over. The Japanese were done. They were in Germany with surrender papers. The Americans wanted to test their bomb and at the same time warn the Russians to back off and not invade Japan because the Americans wanted all the glory of a Japanese defeat. There could have been an advance demonstration in an isolated place or a warning to leave the city. Americans threatened to use the nuclear bomb in the Korean War, then later against Iraq. The Bay of Pigs was an invasion of Cuba. They downed a Cuban civilian jetliner near Barbados in 1976. The CIA supported or installed pro-US dictatorships in Iran, Chile, Guatemala, Indonesia, and other countries. The American military needed a place to try out their new military equipment, so they had a war in Indochina from 1960 to 1975 through Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Over 58,000 American soldiers died and several million Asians. A lot of Americans made good money from the war. The dead are pretty well forgotten now, while the military suppliers and the retired generals live on in comfort and excess. The American bombing of Cambodia left the country in ruins and gave a dictator by the name of Pol Pot power. He killed millions of his countrymen. The murderous rampage was called the Killing Fields. In the 1980s, the U.S. military continued on playing with countries in the Caribbean and Central America, even attacking the tiny island of Grenada. The playground of the U.S. military is currently the Middle East. It started when the Iranians kicked out their American-backed Shah in 1979. The Americans support Israel, which started by bullying the Palestinians off their land. Israel has the 4th largest army in the world in terms of money spent. They get a lot of free military hardware from America, and for the rest, they get the American military to classify it as salvage, so they get it for pennies on the dollar, compliments of the American taxpayer. In 1967, the Israelis bombed the American military ship called the USS Liberty, killing 34 American servicemen. They said it was a mistake, but it was really an attempt to try to pretend they were Egyptian forces attacking the ship because they wanted the US to declare war on Egypt, but their plan failed. The website thelibertyincident.com was written by an ex-military guy who whitewashes it as a tragic mistake. How can you make a mistake when the ship's American flag was clearly flying? Muammar Gaddafi was a good man for Libya. He created what was termed the 8th wonder of the world with his water project to bring agriculture to the desert. He wanted to create a gold-backed universal currency for all of Africa and sell oil in euros, not American dollars. He was a threat to Western imperialism. They bombed Iraq, then imposed economic sanctions that denied health and energy to Iraqi civilians. U.S. forces bombed a Mogadishu neighborhood in Somalia, then angry crowds killed 18 U.S. soldiers and hung their bodies in the streets. When Yugoslavia broke up, Americans went in to bomb Serbia. 2 American pilots bombed a group of their Canadian allies in Afghanistan and killed them. Right after they dropped the bombs, one of them said into his microphone that he hoped they did the right thing, implying he knew there was a possibility that they were innocent people but they dropped the bombs anyway. A report later said that American pilots routinely take amphetamine pills to stay hyped up. In the mainstream media, the propaganda is so common that many people don't believe it anymore, like me. If you want to protect freedom and democracy, guard your own border. Never go beyond it. Help your poor and downtrodden rise up to live better lives. The United States government supports dictatorships worldwide. The US is against Iran getting the atomic bomb, but they have thousands of them. The US uses the media to demonize its enemies. Sometimes they turn on an ally like Saddam. All of a sudden a former friend is a devil. The military force of any country is an evil group of people that do not represent the people and can't be trusted. They do what they want, then lie and cover the truth up. The best people and groups of people have the enlightenment and intelligence to live and let live, to say this is our piece of land. We will live here in peace, invite guests in, and won't go to other lands with any military force ever, regardless of the politics going on. Some people say that war and patriotism can lead to a kind of war fever where anyone can do evil things. There are evil, psychopathic people at the top echelons of power who have their own motives of money and power and don't care who or how many people suffer and die in order for them to get what they want. If you want to go further with it, some people believe that when Lucifer was kicked out of heaven with his minions, they mixed their blood with human blood to create a race of human-looking people called the Nephilim, who look and act charming and human but have different genetics and abilities that are evil to the core. This group secretly controls most of the earth. Their goal is to take total control while pretending they don't exist, that whatever happens is just the folly of the human race. There is plenty of material about this on the internet. I don't know if it's true or not, but because I've seen so much systematic evil in the human race, such as with the scam of the banking system making all of us wage slaves, paying taxes while they get to create money out of thin air. I feel deep down that I'm a plebe in a matrix created and controlled by a small group of evil elitists, but we can overthrow these people if we have the guts to unite and change our governments to true democracies where we, the people, control our governments through online voting. Some evil things the US military has done or does routinely. They use the National Guard against civilians, as with unemployed veterans and striking workers in the past. They routinely sail their ships and aircraft carriers anywhere they want, often into other countries' ocean borders. They drop bombs wherever they want. They spy on everybody, then lie about it. The CIA overthrows governments for the national interest by using bribery, assassinations, wars, mass killings, economic blockades, etc. They use embassy personnel as spies. They have over 800 military bases worldwide. They do covert actions where they use a front group that pretends it's running the show, like the fight in Libya where the rebels were CIA assets. They give locals guns and money to brutalize the country for them, like the Contras in Nicaragua. Foreign aid is a front for intelligence military operations. They do military training and advisory programs not involving direct combat, like arming the Taliban to kick the Soviets out in the 1980s. To be fair, every country does this. They're all the same. The nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The propaganda is that Harry S. Truman made the decision to drop the 2 nuclear bombs on innocent civilians because of compassion. He did not want to risk a land invasion of Japan, which they said would require 1 million American troops, many of whom would lose their lives. Suppose this is true. They could have simply dropped the bomb in an uninhabited area to show the devastation, but even this wasn't necessary. The Japanese had already sent a team to Europe to start the surrender process. Henry Louis Stimson, the American Secretary of War at the time, seemed ambivalent about it. The evidence is in his later letters and lectures after the bombs were dropped. Harry Truman seemed surprised by the devastation they caused. They say that Albert Einstein and other scientists were against using it. They try to put the blame on some unnamed right-wing people in the military who brainwashed Truman into dropping the bombs. The real reason was supposedly that they didn't want the Russians to invade Japan from the north, therefore sharing in the spoils of the victory afterwards. They wanted to send the Russians and the rest of the world a message that they had a big bad bomb that could destroy anything. It's also a primal thing. If you create something new, you want to express it or use it. They created this bomb after several years of hard work. They want to see if it would work. Over 140,000 civilians died in the two bombings, most of them innocent civilians that never knew what hit them. Many more died or were left disabled afterwards due to radiation. There was no outrage in the United States at the time. I suppose the people were tired of war. What would Jesus do? What would a good man do if he were in charge? He would tell the Japs it's time to surrender. We have your islands surrounded. You have no natural oil on your island. You can't go on without oil. If they persisted, a decent leader could explode the bomb in an isolated place and film it, then send it around the world through the media as an empty threat, because a good man would never use a bomb like this to wreak such devastation on innocent people and animals. If I was in charge, once I drove the Japanese back to their homeland, I would say it's done and retreat. The Germans were done. Everybody was tired of war by then. The Japanese learned their lesson. They would have saved face and carried on as a peaceful nation, but the Americans wanted to humiliate them totally. All this does is create permanent animosity. I saw an old film of an American businessman humiliating some Japanese businessmen in the 1950s, acting like America had rebuilt their country for them. They were very aware that he was being condescending. Men never forget if they've been publicly humiliated. China never forgot the devastation of the opium wars created by white people. I think they still want vengeance for the Brits going in there getting millions of their people hooked on opium. The Americans wanted to devastate Japan just like they totally devastated Germany. They wanted to teach everyone a lesson and show the world there was a new kid in town who was now the boss. You can easily find the film of a bombed-out Berlin on YouTube, miles and miles of devastation. They burned plenty of Germans alive in those bombing runs. Harry S. Truman gave the order for the Japanese internment camps in United States. Many American soldiers are dead in graves in foreign lands. They were brave people for what they did. A history of U.S. military operations. This list mostly comes from academic.evergreen.edu/g/grossmaz/interventions.html, which is dead. South Dakota, 1890s, Indians massacred at Wounded Knee. Argentina, 1890, Buenos Aires interests protected. Chile, 1891, Marines clash with nationalist rebels. Haiti, 1891, Black Revolt on Navassa defeated. IDAH 1892, Army suppresses silver miners' strike. Hawaii, 1893, Independent Kingdom overthrown, annexed. Chicago 1894, breaking of rail strike, 34 killed. Nicaragua, 1894, occupation of Bluefields. China, 1894-95, Marines land in Sino-Japanese War. Korea, 1894-96, Marines in Seoul during war. Panama, 1895, Marines land in Colombian province. Nicaragua, 1896, Marines land in port of Corinto. China, 1898-1900, Boxer rebellion fought by foreign armies. Philippines, 1898-1910, seized from Spain, killed 600,000 Filipinos. Cuba, 1898-1902, seized from Spain, still hold Navy base. Puerto Rico 1898 seized from Spain, occupation continues. Guam, 1898 seized from Spain, still used as base. Minnesota, 1898, Army battles Chippewa at Leech Lake. Nicaragua, 1898, Marines land at port of San Juan del Sur. Samoa, 1899, battle over succession to throne. Nicaragua, 1899, Marines land at port of Bluefields. IDAH 1899-1901, Army occupies Coeur d'Alene mining region. Oklahoma, 1901, Army battles Creek Indian Revolt. Panama, 1901-14, broke off from Colombia 1903, annexed Canal Zone, opened Canal 1914. Honduras, 1903, Marines intervene in revolution. Dominican Republic, 1903-04, U.S. interests protected in revolution. Korea, 1904-05, Marines land in Russo-Japanese War. Cuba, 1906-09, Marines land in democratic election. Nicaragua, 1907, dollar diplomacy protectorate set up. Honduras, 1907, Marines land during war with Nicaragua. Panama, 1908, Marines intervene in election contest. Nicaragua, 1910, Marines land in Bluefields and Corinto. Honduras, 1911, U.S. interests protected in Civil War. China, 1911-41, continuous occupation with flare UPS. Cuba, 1912, U.S. interests protected in Civil War. Panama, 1912, Marines land during heated election. Honduras, 1912, Marines protect U.S. economic interests. Nicaragua, 1912-33, occupation. MEXIC 1913, Americans evacuated during Revolution. Dominican Republic, 1914, fight with rebels over Santo Domingo. Colorado 1914, breaking of miners' strike by Army. Mexico 1914-18, series of interventions against nationalists. Haiti, 1914-34, bombing, 19-year occupation after revolts. Texas, 1915, federal soldiers crush plan of San Diego Mexican-American Rebellion. Dominican Republic, 1916-24, 8-year Marine occupation. Cuba, 1917-33, military occupation, economic protectorate. World War I, 1917-18, ships sunk, fought Germany for 1.5 years. Russia, 1918-22, 5 landings to fight Bolsheviks. Panama, 1918-20, police duty during unrest after elections. Honduras, 1919, Marines land during election campaign. Yugoslavia, 1919, intervene for Italy against Serbs in Dalmatia. Guatemala, 1920, 2-week intervention against Unionists. West Virginia, 1920-21, troops, bombing, Army intervenes against mine workers. Turkey, 1922, fought nationalists in Smyrna. China, 1922-27, deployment during nationalist revolt. Mexico Honduras, 1923-25, bombing, troops, air power defends calles from rebellion, landed twice during election strife. Panama, 1925, Marines suppress general strike. China, 1927-34, Marines stationed throughout the country. El Salvador, 1932, warships sent during Martí Revolt. Washington, D.C., 1932, Army stops WWI vet bonus protest. World War II, 1941-45, Hawaii bombed, fought Japan, Italy and Germany for 3 years, First Nuclear War. Detroit, 1943, Army put down Black Rebellion. Iran, 1946, Soviet troops told to leave north. Yugoslavia, 1946, response to shoot-down of U.S. plane. Uruguay, 1947, bombers deployed as show of strength. Greece, 1947-49, U.S. directs extreme right in civil war. Germany, 1948, bombers guard Berlin airlift. China, 1948-49, troops/Marines, evacuate Americans before Communist victory. Philippines, 1948–54, CIA directs war against Huk Rebellion. Puerto Rico 1950, Independence Rebellion crushed in Ponce. Korea, 1951–53, U.S/South Korea fights China/North Korea to stalemate, a bomb threat in 1950, and against China in 1953. Bases still there. Iran, 1953, CIA overthrows democracy, installs Shah. Vietnam, 1954, help the French against siege. Guatemala, 1954, CIA directs exile invasion after new government nationalized U.S. company. Egypt, 1956, Soviets told to keep out of Suez crisis, Marines evacuate foreigners. Lebanon, L958, Army and Marine occupation against rebels. Iraq, 1958, Iraq warned against invading Kuwait. China, L958, China told not to move on Taiwan Isles. Panama, 1958, flag protests erupt into confrontation. Vietnam, L960-75, fought South Vietnam Revolt and North Vietnam, 1 million killed in longest U.S. Cuba, L961, CIA directed exile invasion fails. Germany, L961, alert during Berlin Wall crisis. Laos, 1962, military buildup during guerrilla war. Cuba, L962, blockade during missile crisis, near war with Soviet Union. Iraq, 1963, CIA organizes coup that killed president, brings Ba'ath Party to power, and Saddam Hussein back from exile to be head of the Secret Service. Panama, L964, Panamanians shot for urging canal's return. Indonesia, L965, million killed in CIA-assisted army coup. Dominican Republic, 1965–66, Army and Marines land during election campaign. Guatemala, L966–67, Green Berets intervene against rebels. Detroit, L967, Army battles African Americans, 43 killed. United States, L968, after ML King is shot, over 21,000 soldiers in cities. Cambodia, L969–75, up to 2 million killed in decade of bombing, starvation and political chaos. Oman, L970, U.S. directs Iranian marine invasion. Laos, L971–73, U.S. directs South Vietnamese invasion, carpet bombs countryside. South Dakota, L973, Army directs Wounded Knee siege of Lakotas. Mideast, 1973, Mideast War. Chile, 1973, CIA-backed coup ousts elected Marxist president. Cambodia, L975, gassing of captured ship Mayaguez, 28 troops die when copter shot down. Angola, L976–92, CIA assists South African-backed rebels. Iran, L980, raid to rescue embassy hostages, 8 troops die in copter plane crash. Libya, L981, 2 Libyan jets shot down in maneuvers. El Salvador, L981–92, anti-rebel war, soldiers briefly involved in hostage clash. Nicaragua, L981–90, CIA directs exile, Contra, invasions, plants harbor mines against revolution. Lebanon, L982–84, Marines expel PLO and back Phalangists, Navy bombs and shells Muslim positions. 241 Marines killed when Shia rebel bombs barracks. Grenada, L983–84, invasion 4 years after revolution. Honduras, L983–89, maneuvers help build bases near borders. Iran, L984, jets, 2 Iranian jets shot down over Persian Gulf. Libya, L986, bombing, naval, air strikes. Bolivia, 1986, Army assists raids on cocaine region. Iran, L987-88, U.S. intervenes on site of Iraq in war. Libya, 1989, 2 Libyan jets shot down. Virgin Islands, 1989, St. Croix black unrest after storm. Philippines, 1989, air cover provided for government against coup. Panama, 1989, nationalist government ousted by 27,000 soldiers, leaders arrested, 2,000 plus killed. Liberia, 1990, foreigners evacuated during civil war. Saudi Arabia, 1990-91, Iraq countered after invading Kuwait. 540,000 troops also stationed in Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, Israel. Iraq, 1990-91, blockade of Iraqi and Jordanian ports, airstrikes, 200,000 plus killed in invasion of Iraq and Kuwait, large-scale destruction of Iraqi military. Kuwait, 1991, Kuwait royal family returned to throne. Iraq, 1991-2003, no-fly zone over Kurdish north, Shiite south, constant airstrikes and naval-enforced economic sanctions. Los Angeles, 1992, Army, Marines deployed against anti-police uprising. Somalia, 1992-94, U.S. led United Nations occupation during civil war, raids against one Mogadishu faction. Yugoslavia, 1992-94, NATO blockade of Serbia and Montenegro. Bosnia, 1993, no-fly zone patrolled in civil war, downed jets, bombed Serbs. Haiti, 1994, blockade against military government, troops restore President Aristide to office 3 years after coup. Zaire, Congo, 1996-97, troops at Rwandan Hutu refugee camps, in area where Congo revolution begins. Liberia, 1997, soldiers under fire during evacuation of foreigners. Albania, 1997, soldiers under fire during evacuation of foreigners. Sudan, 1998, attack on pharmaceutical plant alleged to be terrorist nerve gas plant. Afghanistan, 1998, attack on former CIA training camps used by Islamic fundamentalist groups alleged to have attacked embassies. Iraq, 1998, 4 days of intensive airstrikes after weapons inspectors allege Iraqi obstructions. Yugoslavia, 1999, heavy NATO airstrikes after Serbia declines to withdraw from Kosovo. NATO occupation of Kosovo. Yemen, 2000, USS Cole, docked in Aden, bombed. Macedonia, 2001, NATO forces deployed to move and disarm Albanian rebels. United States, 2001, reaction to hijacker attacks on New York, D.C. Afghanistan, 2001, massive U.S. mobilization to overthrow Taliban, hunt al-Qaeda fighters, install Karzai regime, and battle Taliban insurgency. Yemen, 2002, Predator drone missile attack on al-Qaeda, including a U.S. citizen. Philippines, 2002, training mission for Philippine military fighting Abu Sayyaf rebels evolves into combat missions in Sulu Archipelago, west of Mindanao. Colombia, 2003, U.S. Special Forces sent to rebel zone to back up Colombian military protecting oil pipeline. Iraq, 2003, Saddam regime toppled in Baghdad. Liberia, 2003, peacekeeping force as rebels drove out leader. Haiti, 2004-05, Marines and Army land after right-wing rebels oust elected President Aristide, who was advised to leave by Washington. Pakistan, 2005, Special Forces raids on alleged al-Qaeda and Taliban refuge villages kill multiple civilians. Drone attacks also on Pakistani Mursad network. Somalia, 2006, Special Forces advise Ethiopian invasion that topples Islamist government, AC-130 strikes, cruise missile attacks and helicopter raids against Islamist rebels, naval blockade against pirates and insurgents. Syria, 2008, Special Forces in helicopter raid 5 miles from Iraq kill 8 Syrian civilians. Yemen, 2009, missile attack on Al-Qaeda kills 49 civilians, Yemeni military assaults on rebels. Libya, 2011, NATO coordinates airstrikes and missile attacks against Gaddafi government during uprising by rebel army. Iraq, 2014, intervene against Islamic State insurgents, training Iraqi and Kurdish troops. Syria, 2014, airstrikes and special forces intervene against Islamic State insurgents, training other Syrian insurgents.